Welcome to working with percentages. So we're going to start here to converting a percent to a decimal. So if you want to convert a percent to a decimal, so let's just say 62%. The process is like dividing that by 100, and when you divide by 100, you move the decimal 2 places left. Well, you can see right now in the 62% our decimal is at the end. So when I divide by 100, that really moves the decimal 2 places, and I'm left with 0.62 as a decimal. So doing some examples of these, if you have 75%, now you can actually divide each one of these by 100 or locate the decimal. So I have 75 percent. Then I just move the decimal 2 places to the left, and that equals 0.75. So if I have 3%, that is like 3 point. Decimal 2 places to the left, and that means in that hump I got to put a 0, so I have 0.03. In 11, this half, remember half is like 0.5, so this is like 100.5%. So when I move that 2 places to the left, I end up with 1.005. Next set, you might want to try these first, but same concept, right? We take the decimal, we move it 2 places. If you have an empty hump, you've got an extra 0, so I've got 0.0058. In number 5, 3/4, if you remember, is 0.75. So I have 6.75%. 2 places, look at that extra hump, so 0.0675. And in number 6, I got a lot of numbers, but when I move my decimal 2 places, I get 0.63655. We need all of those non-zero numbers. Now we can also go the other way. If I have a decimal, right, so if I have 0.17, if I want to change that to a percent, I multiply by 100. And if you multiply by 100, this moves the decimal 2 places to the right. And it moves it 2 places because we have the 2 zeros. If you kind of think about scientific notation, same basic concept of moving the decimal. So for this one, if I want to change it to a percent, I locate the decimal. Multiply by 100 means move it 2 places to the right, and I've got 53%. Multiply by 100, 2 places to the right. Notice the empty hump gets a 0, and I have 250%. In number 9, 2 places, I've got a hump, so I've got a 0, so 70%. In number 10, a lot of numbers, but I move it just 2 places, so here's where my new point is. So I have 0.00636%. If I move it 2 places to the right, I have percent. Number 11, 2 places, so I have 9.1%. And in number 12, 2 places, I've got 0.5%. All right, and now we're going to use proportions to solve some percent problems. So the proportions are pretty straightforward when you set them up. In that 1/2 of the proportion will always have the percent value over 100 because percent means out of 100. So I always make it, I usually put it on my left side because I always start with the percents because it's easy to locate those. On the other side, we talk about this as a part to whole ratio. And depending on your problem, if it's a word problem, a word statement, I guess, not necessarily a story problem, but if you see the word is and of, and I think we're going to do a couple of these, yes we are, is the part of the problem where of represents the whole. So depending on what you're thinking of, the right side can be thought of in either of these 2 ways, is over of or part over whole. But your one side is always the percent over 100. So let's do a couple of these. What is 40.2% of 150? Okay, so I want to think about my proportion. I locate my percent pretty easily. Percent, just like it is, always over 100. Now, when I look at the rest of my problem, I see of 150. Well, of goes on the bottom. What is? I don't know what is. So x goes on the top. So I cross multiply, and at this point I hope you've watched enough videos that you are familiar with cross multiplying, and we end up with an x value of 60.3. Number 2, again, here's my percent, so I have 35 over 100. 18.48 is, so that goes on the top, and of what number, so that goes on the bottom. And just a quick refresher, If I cross multiply, that means I have 35x equals 1848, because I multiply this way to get the 1848. Divide both sides by 35, and that gives me my x value of, I got to make sure I have the right one here, 52.8. Number 3, what percent? Well, when it says what percent, I don't know what percent, but percent always goes over 100. Of 2.4, of goes on the bottom, is 9, is goes on the top. Now you can see in the right ratio that the top number is bigger than the bottom number, so I know on the left side that my top number is going to be bigger than my bottom number. So when I cross multiply 2.4x equals 900, divide both sides by 2.4, I get x equals 375%. And make sure you have that percent sign, because that's what the question asked. What percent? Number 4, 5.5% of what number is 20? Well, 5.5 is 5.5, and that was my percent, so it goes over 100. Of what number? Of goes on the bottom. Is 20. Is goes on the top. I cross multiply, and I end up with a value of 363.64. Story problem. In a focus group of 240 people, 25 stated they really liked the pilot TV show they just watched. What percent of the people in this focus group liked the TV show? What percent? I don't know, but percent goes over 100. Now, this is a story problem, and story problems I think are a little bit easier to think of in terms of part to whole. So when you look at these two numbers, you have 240 people, 25 liked the TV show. Which one of those numbers is everybody? Well, the focus group was 240 people. That's everybody. 25 of them liked the TV show. That's only part of the group. So part to whole, and that ends up giving us an answer of 10.42%. And I did round, I believe. Number 6, according to a research study, 24,760 respondents, right, that's all the people they talked to, stated that their religious affiliation was Christianity. If this represents, oh my gosh, we have a percent, I'm just going to take that percent and chuck it over 100. Okay, how many people, oh goodness, let me back up. I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. 24,000 respondents stated that the religion, so that many people said a particular thing. So I should have read the whole question first, I really apologize. How many people were surveyed total if 24,760 of them responded that they liked Christianity? So the rest of them didn't, right? There's something else. So because they asked how many were surveyed in total, total goes on the bottom. Sorry, I really should back that up, but I don't know how. And it's okay. You know, we all make mistakes, and you just have to make sure that you read the whole question first. It's a good skill to demonstrate there. But we end up with 35,071 people were surveyed in total. And number 7, let's go ahead and read the whole question first. 1,006 American adults were asked if stormy weather could interfere with their cloud computing. Of those surveyed, 51% responded they believed it could. How many people from the survey believed it could? Okay, so now we're asking how many people from the survey believe a certain thing, and that's part, right? So this is how many were asked total. Got that one right. And then again, we have percent. Percent is always over 100. So we end up with 513 people believe a certain thing about stormy weather. All right, and I think that's it. Yep. So I hope you enjoyed proportion and percents.